All right, here we are. Back again. What is it today? It's Tuesday, I think, isn't it? Tuesday, April 14th. It's finally pouring rain. I don't know if I mean finally. we had a few days of sunshine, and that's a lot for around here. It's almost like it stops raining, goes sunny for a few days. You feel like you're going to be about to be into a drought or something. But anyway, it's all good. I finally have my big water tank hooked up beside the meat bird coop out there with a elbow going down from the gutter to fill it up with good, pure water for those birds to grow up on. That's working right now. Beautiful. The little baby meat birds come tomorrow. But anyway, first I'm going to share with you guys, like I woke up early this morning, my eyes are scratched and shit. I was ripping around on the quad and I think I got them full of pollen. It feels really familiar to that time I got my eyes infected in Alabama a couple years ago, but not that bad. Nothing's that bad. And I was just scrolling through and I caught some video. What was it titled? Hold on a minute here. But I recorded an excerpt from it just to get the wheels turning for a minute. It got my wheels turning, but there's a lot in the video before I got to this part. And it's titled, Anunnaki Gods Are Not Who We Think. / Jordan Maxwell Hidden Knowledge. I never heard of this man or the other men mentioned in this video with a lot of other older interviews pertaining to the Anunnaki and our true history, alleged true history, and on and on. But anyways, I cut this chunk out. Now, take a listen to this. Just take a listen to this. This kind of makes you go, huh?
Do with anything on the earth. Well, I say no. I beg to differ. There are too many things going on in this earth and in the lives of every person on the earth. And everybody I meet tells me, boy, I had this strange experience when somebody came into my life and did this or that, and I saw this or that, and I had these strange premonitions. So I know that there's just too much going on with the human family that defies imagination. So I, like all other men who care, I have to assume that there is some kind of an overshadowing intelligence watching us. And it gives to each one according to his deed. You do things good for people, people will come back and do good things for you. If you go out and hurt other people will come in and hurt you. So there's like a laws in the universe. What goes around comes around. And why is that in everybody's life? Does somebody keep track of every single human? Yes. Somehow or another, there is a continual monitoring of human life on the earth, and everybody gets what's coming to them eventually. So there's too many things that I know and I've seen with my own eyes that tells me. There's a classic example, and let me give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say something is overshadowing us. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. You may have heard this before, but if you haven't, listen closely. It has to do a situation with Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy. Have you ever heard the connection between Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy, the president?
Yeah, actually I have, because I've spent a lot of
Okay,
time.
well, let me read this. Let me read this to the people who haven't. If you've never heard this, then listen closely. Abraham Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. John Kennedy was elected to Congress 1946. Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. John F. Kennedy was elected president 1960. The names Lincoln and Kennedy each contain 7 letters. Both presidents were particularly concerned with civil rights. Both wives of both presidents lost children while living in the White House. Both presidents were shot on a Friday. Both presidents were shot in the head. President Lincoln's secretary was named Miss Kennedy. Kennedy's secretary was named Miss Lincoln. Both were assassinated by Southerners. Both were succeeded by Southerners. Both successors to both presidents were both named Johnson. Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Lincoln, was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson, who succeeded Kennedy, was born in 1908. John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated Lincoln, was born in 1839. Lee Harvey Oswald, three names, Lee Harvey Oswald, who was said to have assassinated Kennedy, was born in 1939, exactly 100 years apart. Both assassins were known by their three names. Both names are comprised of 15 letters. Lincoln was shot at a theater called Ford. Kennedy was shot in a car made by Ford called Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth ran from a theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. Both Oswald and Booth were assassinated before they could go to trial. All of these coincidences are not coincidences. This all seems to be telling you a story, that things are happening all around you and they're mysterious. Why these dates? Why these connections behind the scenes? So the world is filled with strange things. Like I said, the book, the complete works of Charles Fort, give you a whole book full of things which have never been figured out why they happen. So I'm just saying that the world is being overshadowed by something that mankind calls God. But you have no idea what that word means. You have no real idea about what you're talking about. So you need to define the terms and wake up and and train yourself to be intellectually honest. And then you will always see how much you don't know, how much you don't understand. And then you will begin to ask questions. And that's what the human brain was designed to do, is wake up, grow up, become adult, and ask questions and begin to train your mind to be intellectually honest and look at the facts and look up the facts. Like Steve Allen used to say, there are two kinds of facts, the kind you look up and the kind you make up.
Intellectually honest. That's a pretty good one, isn't it? That wouldn't be a bad thing for a lot of people to focus on if they could, or if they're even steered that way. And then I think another lesson I've learned already for me is by observing and possibly from trial and error growing up is you do have payback. People do come into your life that do unto you, right? You can watch, you can see it in a lot of people. You do good things, and a lot of good things happen. I know that one. Absolutely. But anyway, the Lincoln Kennedy thing, had anybody heard about that before? Heard all those comparisons and those similarities before? Holy cow, that makes you go, what the F, huh? That's a little odd, right? Anyway, there's a bunch of interviews in there. I think if I get time, maybe soon, I can have a little more listens. I listen, most of the times when I do listen, it's like all through the middle of the night or early morning when I wake up and I want to put something on to listen to, and I'll find something that will hopefully enhance my brain instead of lower my IQ, which the majority of the shit online does to your average person. And that's when I listen. Or when I'm working here and I can put on some headphones, I'm going to start listening to those old-time interviews a little more. Now, moving along. Let's hear from some honest people today, shall we? Especially today. All you honest people are such a breath of fresh air. A good chunk of dose of honesty every day. Tell you what, keeps the cuckoo doctors away. Steve. There's no title on this one? No title. Oh, no, it is titled Zippers. Steve. I've had many incidents over the years that have brought me to know that the Sasquatch people exist. I've never truly seen or smelt one or even seen a definitive footprint, but I've had just about everything else. I've been listening to your channel since about the same time you first started sharing your Sasquatch experiences. I've thought about writing mine in over the last year or so, but kept resisting, as my experiences aren't nearly as scary, unique, or interesting as most of those you read. But then I realized that probably 90% of the people listening have had similar experiences as I've had without actually seeing them, and might benefit from hearing my more common type of experiences. So here it goes. Yeah, never ever compare to anything here to decide whether or not you're worthy to be heard. Everybody's worthy to be heard, no matter what. There's no qualifications. My friend and I had a great 2018 elk hunting season. We'd hunted a new area up on the west end of the Wintom mountain range, approximately 50 miles east of Salt Lake City, Utah. For family reasons, I needed to be relatively close to home, but wanted to get away from the crowd, so I scouted out a spot that was close to town, but difficult to hike into, with loads of elk. Sometimes I went alone. Sometimes my hunting mentor and friend was able to join me. While I was new to hunting and wasn't able to harvest that year, we had lots of close calls with solo walk and stalk, and with my friend calling for me. We had a lot of fun, and we were very excited for the 2019 season. Hunting that same area in 2019 turned out to be a totally different story. I've been following Sasquatch stories off and on for a couple years, so I immediately recognized some sign when we first started scouting that year. We went up midsummer to set up some game cameras. We had chosen a specific water hole to set up one camera at. Upon approaching the hole for the first time that year, I saw a set of crossed sticks that appeared to have been carefully placed in the game trail leading up to the water hole. Both sticks about the same length and diameter, and at 90 degrees to each other. I pointed this out to my friend. We went on and set up the camera. We went back to the water hole a few weeks later to set up a tree stand and check the camera. While setting up the tree stand, I noticed 2 sticks hanging on a broken branch stub on a live tree. See the attached picture. Those are the horses out back, if you could hear that. They're going, like, those are the horses, not me. They're right outside the window. Sorry. These sticks were again at near perfect 90-degree angle. The statistical odds of these sticks ending up like that would be astronomical. They were put there by some intelligent being. I doubt it was a human. And as we checked multiple cameras in the area, there were only elk on any of them. After what we saw in there the year before, we were surprised. In hindsight, what? There were no elk on any of them. After what we saw in there the year before, we were surprised. In hindsight, I should have taken the sign and then moved to a different area, but in my ignorance, I persisted. I saw other larger structures too. Logs laid out in large grid patterns. See the picture. There's no pictures. I'll have to look. Wood piles of straight sticks of approximate equal length and size, all neatly stacked with no sign of humans around. These could not have been human, but my gut says, these could have been human, but my gut says it was not. I've seen large A-frame structures where the root ball is in the air, or clearly moved from where it grew with logs far too heavy for even 3 to 4 humans to move. And as I sat in the tree stand with my bow, between scanning the trees and clearings, I would watch the bees and the other insects near the water, birds flying around and hopping about, squirrels squawking, crows flying over, etc. Multiple times I had those times of eerie silence where there were no birds, bugs, squirrels, or anything. Just dead, calm silence with no sign of life. Sometimes it would last for hours, and in those times I never felt unsafe, fearful, or the need to leave, but I felt they were near. One time I was in the tree stand. My friend was walk and stalk hunting about half a mile away, and felt that eerie feeling of being watched. Another time walking into the area, I was alone about 1.5 hours before first light. I had a small LED headlamp on my head as I was walking in. I would typically scan through the bushes and trees from side to side, as there were often deer or cattle in the area that would be looking back. One time while scanning, I saw a pair of eyes looking back at me, about 50 yards away. Large eyes, about 12 to 14 inches apart. They reflected green. And as a side note, I've since paid close attention to the stories of Sasquatch reflected eye color. 12 to 14 inches, you know what? I don't know of anything on this continent that has that. Like I've shared with you guys before, a big grizzly bear is going to be 4.5 inches between the eyes. Okay? So what's a bovine? What's a cow? What are they, about 8? Maybe? No 12 to 14 inch eye spread running around here. No elephants here in the timber. They reflected green. As a side note, I've since paid close attention to the stories of Sasquatch reflected eye color. Most describe them as red, but some have described them as green. It was dark enough that I couldn't tell height or make out any body shape. At first I thought it was just a cow, but whatever it was looking back at me then ducked one eye behind a tree, peeking out from behind the tree with the second eye. That's a pretty good indicator. As I kept walking, there was a small patch of bushes that obstructed my view, where the eyes were looking at me. After passing the obstruction, I looked over again and saw both eyes looking at me again. This time, they both shifted to the side, hiding behind a tree. Red flag. I can't imagine any typical forest animal or cattle having the intelligence to hide behind a tree. I was nervous, but kept walking. I've heard that these beings can mimic just about any sound. One day I was alone, walk and stalk hunting midday on a north-facing, steep, dark pined forested area. I came to a nearly level shelf with a clearing or meadow on it, about 80 to 100 yards across. While just inside the tree line, I stood listening and looking around, and while doing so, I clearly heard the sound of a zipper, like someone zipping up a jacket, coming from what sounded like 20 to 30 yards away towards the middle of this clearing. But no one was there. I stood there for a while to see if another hunter would emerge from somewhere, but there was no place anyone could hide. I felt a strong sense that one or more of these beings was standing there looking at me, but I couldn't see anything. My sixth sense was telling me that I was not welcome here, and this was a polite way they were asking me to leave, and I did. That hunting season was quite a disappointment. I should have left the area and hunted elsewhere. Then last summer, 2020, I was with my wife and kids at a high mountain lake in central Utah in the middle of the day. I was playing with a sling, throwing golf ball-sized rocks across the lake, into the lake, and skipping rocks across the water, etc., when one of the rocks inadvertently hit a tree square on the truck. When one of the rocks inadvertently hit a tree square on the truck. Oh, on the trunk, I think you meant. Sorry. It made a loud tree knock sound. And about 5 minutes later, we heard a tree knock response back from up in the forest a few hundred yards away. I've heard tree knocks multiple times through the years, but having it as an apparent response to what I had done was interesting. We never felt or heard anything else on that trip. The two scariest encounters I had was only a couple of miles from the hunting pond as we were camping as a family back in 2016. One morning I took off on an early morning ATV ride alone, other than my dog riding along. At about 6:30 a.m., I was a couple of miles from the nearest campers. So I pulled out my .357 revolver and was shooting at some rocks I had set on a tree stump. The dog hates it and cowers when I shoot, but she will immediately perk back up when I put the guns away. But as soon as I had finished off the 6 rounds in the gun, I heard a deep, fast-paced thumping noise coming from about 100 yards away in the thick pine forest. I've never heard anything like it before or since. The best I can describe it is a grouse thumping its wings, but the pace of thumping didn't change how a grouse does. It was like a massive, deep drum thumping, roughly 3 beats per second. It was loud enough, whatever made it, it sounded big. It made the thumping noise for about 5 seconds, stopped for about 10 seconds, then again for another 3 seconds. It did this through 3 iterations of thumping. I wasn't so nervous about hearing this odd noise as I was about my dog's response to it. She was cowering on the far side of the ATV from the noise, half under it, and did not want to come out. Red flag again. I finally got her to come out and climb on the ATV, and we went back to camp. It took her another few hours to get back to normal. I felt like the creature that made the thumping noise was unhappy that I was disturbing the peaceful morning and wanted me to leave. That night, as we were settling in for the night, I felt that overpowering feeling of being watched. It was so strong I could feel the direction it was coming from. It was so strong it made it awkward to even breathe at times. I've never felt anything like it. I didn't feel that sense that we needed to leave, but just that we were being watched, and it wanted me to know that. I hope that hearing these experiences will help someone out there. Like I mentioned before, I've never really seen one, but these beings are around. They seem to move and relocate from time to time. I'm glad I haven't had any closer encounters than this. Steve, thanks for sharing the facts. Thanks, Bob. Bob, thanks for sharing the email, my man. Yeah, the thumping. You know what? I can relate to that thumping. One time, I've had the tree knocks when I was trapping wolves, and then farther up years ago when I thought I was the big smart-ass, big, awesome hunting guide, I was going to go out and put my skills to finding these people once and for all and have my ass handed to me. I heard the calls, like a 3 or 4 three-toned call, only about 50 yards from me and this young kid that guided with me and worked for me during the summers. And I seen a black thing pop up and then 30 feet to the right pop up, duck down across this huge meadow from me like a game of Frogger, but it was black and hairy. I don't know what it was, scared the shit out of me. And I snuck into that same meadow with my camera on a tripod, my 300 Win Mag hitting the grass, and then that tree started getting it sounded like a log blasting through the underbrush and impacting on a big cottonwood tree, maybe less than 200 yards from me. And then that was it. I'm like, I'm done. I don't need to look for you guys anymore. I'm done. But moving along. And then before that, I went up the Birkenhead Lake gravel road, logging road. The south end of Birkenhead Lake, there's a logging road that goes up, and then you can access Birkenhead Lake from there, which goes to a place where another fella said there was an elderly man there years ago who took food to these beings all the time, and he had Polaroids of them, and he saw them, and he had seen these beings himself enough times that he said to me, this is all in private email at the time, and he said those ones he had on the Polaroids definitely weren't the ones down by the lake. Anyway, and he told me that was years after I had my experience in the same area. So what I did was I went up that logging road, which goes up to the back end near Tenquill Lake, and used to be able to park there and hike to get to that lake. And then the logging road would dogleg right, go across a bridge, back trail around a mountain, go up another valley, and start heading up towards the mountain, where the same mountain where my arrow was stuck in the snow. Remember that story? Okay, general area. Anyway, and since this went down, this particular logging road's been completely blocked off and the bridge has been taken out. You can't even get into this spot anymore. And I went up there, I went to the end of that road, and I was specifically looking, snooping. And I was on my old Grizzly quad, 450 quad or 400, whatever that the damn thing is, Yamaha quad. And I'm sitting there on the quad. I'm looking down into the timber across about 40 yards of clear cut with the motor running into the timber. I'm feeling kind of funky. And all of a sudden I could hear a thumping. It sounded like a boulder or a big rock being pounded on the ground, coming out of that timber right below me. And at first I thought it was just something vibrating or something to do with my quad because the motor's running. Nope, that's a sound I'm hearing over the motor of the quad coming out of that timber right there. So I did what most typical people do when they're looking for Bigfoot. I turned around and got the hell out of there, right? Freaked me out. Turned the quad around and left. But then later on I found out when the man described to me where this guy was leaving the food for these people, it was within 200 meters where I was sitting on my quad, where that old fella was leaving was bringing food to them all the time. Crazy, right? But anyways, I'm just saying that's the only time I've heard a thumping where you're trying to describe the thumping to the people, and a lot of people say, it's probably a grouse. No, that's not the thumping sound being described. That's what I'm saying. Babble, babble. Who else do we got today? All right, here we go. And this email is titled, A Different Kind of Brown Bear Story. Dear Steve, I'm watching the channel on which you share Sasquatch stories for a couple of years now. Excuse me. I've gone from someone who saw the Patterson film almost when it first came out and was not sure what to think of it, to, after listening to your shared stories, being completely sure they are out there all over the world. Oh, good. I'm very glad to hear that, to read that. I've learned a lot about how to handle it if I should ever come across one. Thank you. Knowledge is power, the power to survive, isn't it ever? Just a quick note regarding my background. I had a 40-year career as a registered nurse. Most of that time was in either the ICU or the operating room. I started out in the OR back in Wisconsin. And over time, I moved back to California and progressed to working at the Perimeter Hospital in Northern California. It was challenging because all the hardest cases, even otherwise hopeless cases, came there from all over the world. It was the policy of the hospital at the time, in the mid-70s, to assign the same team to a patient. If that patient was coming in for a series of surgeries, as many of them did, I was assigned to the case of a young woman, a professional geologist who had been working in Alaska. She was working with a team that was doing a survey for minerals in the Alaskan outback. The team's routine was to drop the individual team members in one location for the day, then come back to pick them up towards the evening. I understand that she had been offered a gun, but had declined, thinking she could just yell and throw rocks, and any animal would leave her alone. Inevitably, the day came she was dropped off, and a couple of hours later, a bear was attracted to her. She yelled through the rocks, but the bear just came up to her, knocked her down, and started snacking on her, biting her under the arms, licking and sucking, and eating small pieces of flesh at a time. What? No. She laid there for a long time, terrified to move, probably in shock, waiting for the helicopter to come back and pick her up. Her right arm was removed while she was still in Alaska. She was transferred to us in the hope of saving her left arm. She was a young woman and hoped to have children. Before each surgery, I would check in on her out in the OR hallway and talk with her while the surgical team finished their preparations for her surgery so that she would not be so nervous before going into the room to have her next procedure. And we at first tried to remove as much of the infected tissue as possible. Then, in subsequent procedures, tried to revascularize, restore the blood circulation to her arm. Finally, the day came when it was decided that the arm could not be saved, and to save her life, it must be removed. When we went through our routine, she was induced, surgery started, and about 20 minutes later, I was standing to one side in the OR room with her arm in my hands. I knew it was going to be removed, but somehow I was in enough denial that I hadn't thought where to put it. It was much too large for any specimen container. Even wrapped in surgical drapes, it was much too big to temporarily store by the small sink in the room. It seemed disrespectful and not proper from a bacterial containment point of view to put it on the floor where the dirty sponges were put in order to account for them before the end of the surgery. It was infected. In just a moment, something went crunch in my mind. My entire mental circuit board just shorted out. Although I'm sure it was just a few seconds, it seemed like I stood there for hours, unable to move. If I had gotten to know her personally, it might have been different. I had read of people who were born without arms who went on to be able to function as parents, but all I could foretell was the overwhelming grief of this young woman to find herself in such a situation. Within 6 months, I had left the OR and found a home in the ICU, but that's another story. And I've often thought that if anyone could say something that might help me make peace with this experience, I've thought that it might be you. As you know these animals so well and know the woods is home. When in your video today, April 11th, 2021, was an older email here. I heard you say that bears will run away when they catch your scent. I was horrified. Sure, maybe sometimes, but don't count your life on it. Please share my story and please share any wisdom you might have that would help make peace with my experience. Thank you for being a force for compassion and sanity. Rose McLeod. Wow, Rose, that's quite the story, and I'm saddened in a way that I didn't find it. Well, I have got so many that haven't been read. It's amazing. But I'm getting them, obviously. Wisdom. All I know is, especially in British Columbia, there's an old wildlife biologist who wrote a book, Bear Attacks. I think it's called by Clayton Sheldon. Clayton Sheldon. I think his son might have been killed by a bear, actually, because I know his son's name is on the back of the book, and he's in memory of his son. Anyway, he compiled a book and he compiled information on every single bear attack, charge, human death relay, anything. He compiled every single thing he could find on bear attacks, aggressive behavior, whatever. And what he found was the farther north you go in BC, and I would imagine probably just the northern hemisphere, the farther north you go in BC, all these were mostly from BC, he proved that there is a predatory, aggressive nature from black bears toward humans. The farther north you go, they get more aggressive. And I've had experiences that prove that to me. But for the most part, from what I've experienced, is if you surprise a black bear in any way, shape, or form, I always, unless I'm hunting, and I got a weapon, it's no big deal, and I don't want to spook anything I'm after, but like if I'm doing trail cameras or fishing or something, I go running at them, making all the noise I can, like, I'm going to get you. I chase them up a tree or whatever, make them run. That's what I do. But there's just the odd time, right? I mean, I shared a video with you guys. I might even share it again if I've got it right here. I shared a video with you guys of just an average sized black bear in the fall. I was deer hunting and that sucker's in that aspen poplar stand with me. And he almost did a full circle around me, sidewalking to me. When they're doing side eye is a huge red flag. When the bears are doing, any predators sidewalking slowly, giving you the side eye, they're thinking dirty thoughts. When they're looking at you like this, head on, looking, standing up, looking, they're trying to figure out what you are. But after they see you and they're doing the sidewalk looking at you, they're about to do something sleazy maybe. And this one particular time in the video I shared with you guys, I almost popped him. And I'm telling him, I'm just staying calm going, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. I'm going to smoke your ass. I should have shot that bear actually. But another time for me personally, I had a guy, northern British Columbia, and we're on a trail in the timber. Horses are tied up. I'm calling up a bull moose down out of the deep timber. You can hear him coming. I don't have a gun. Hunter's got the gun. My gun's on my horse. We're about 40 meters up the horse trail, the game trail. We're talking remote as remote can be. And we're looking this way. The trail's that way. Horses are that way. And I'm calling the moose, and then my hunter goes, Steve, there's a bear watching us right now. And I go, what? Where? Up on the head of the trail. I look up. Here's this less than average black bear. I don't know, maybe 200-pound bear. Standing on the trail, maybe 20 meters from us. And I looked at him, and I'm going like this. Get out of here. I'm trying not to make any sound. He started to go sideways like this. I had a red hoodie on, the brown faded Carhartt coveralls, and a dark brown cowboy hat. I didn't look like a moose, a deer, a caribou, or an elk. I looked like a human being. And there wasn't one bush between me and that bear. Anyway, he turns, looks straight at me, and then he goes to walking like a cat stalking a mouse. I could not believe my eyeballs. Two human beings standing there, and he's doing the stalk, full-on stalk. And I'm like, what? So I wave my arms in the air again. Excuse me. And then he Didn't even flinch. Didn't even flinch. He's still slowly coming, getting ready to do the fast rush. I'm like, give me your gun. And I gave him the gun. I put it in his head and I dumped him. See ya. And I dumped him. Some people say, why didn't you scare him away? Because at the time, we had 2 small boys under 5 years old in camp full time for the 3 months playing around in the bushes around the cabin. No. And that wasn't that far away. That bear is getting it. Yeah. But for the most part, 98% of the time, black bears run. They don't want nothing to do with you. Like, uh-oh, especially where they're hunted, right? But how do you, I mean, if people get traumatized from these things, what do you do to encourage them? I guess it's the same thing as the people that see these creatures in the woods. And I try to encourage people to go anyway, right? And we're all going to die eventually. I guess I shouldn't say that, but you just go anyways. You make sure nothing stops you from living your life to the fullest. And if that's the case, bring a weapon. Everybody should have maybe a possible, like a little bit of a mini survival checklist for going into the woods by themselves or going in a park, going for the hike for the day. You know what I mean? Like just a little fanny pack. Some kind of knife with a hilt on it, and the hilt will stop your hand from sliding down the blade. If you have to resort to stabbing something to save your ass, always have a knife with a hilt so you do not slide your hand down that blade while the blade potentially hits bone, right? And you can try a can of bear spray / seasoning. Myself, bear spray, just for me. Now, on me. Now, bear spray seems to be seasoning for way too many encounters I've heard of, especially grizzly bears. When a grizzly bear wants your ass, he's going to come and take it, right? But I guess it's better than nothing. It has worked. Obviously, it has worked. I know somebody who it's worked for. Our outfitter's daughter years ago went for a hike up behind the ranch, got charged by a sow grizzly and 2 cubs, and she had bear spray and blasted in the face, and it worked. Thank God. But there's so many cases of bear spray not working. I'd prefer to have a weapon. Yeah, I don't know if everything I just shared would help anybody or not that was a little traumatized from something like that, a woman losing her arm to a bear. There's been a lot of people killed by black bears, a lot of children, a lot of adults, a lot in North America. Anyway, moving along. Appreciate your email. Bit of a gruesome story there. Holy cow, what a shitty... I'm sure she's doing fine. That young lady, I hope she is. I'm sure everybody will throw a prayer out for her anyway. What's this? It's titled My Story. I was 16 at the time. It wasn't hunting season yet, but I was bored. So like an hour or more before dark, I left for an area about a mile away from my parents' house on the White Earth Reservation. There were some fields that stretched out a half a mile, then turned left and went on another half a mile. I found the spot at the end of the fields and climbed a pine, about 12 feet up, and sat and waited. Well, nothing was showing up. An hour later, and darkness is right there. Then the clouds moved in and it started pouring. So I just sat there where I was dry. So it pissed for a good minute and then stopped, so I jumped down to make my way home through the mud. Well, about a quarter of the way back, I could hear something walking with me about 30 feet away. I would catch it when I would suddenly pause. I had a .22 7 shot. Damn thing jammed after every shot. I knew it could only fire once to scare off whatever that is, so by this time I was halfway home, turning that corner on seeing our porch light way off out there. And this is where I took a shot in the direction of the thing following me. I pointed, shot, and holy shit, what the F. Something that shook the ground ran by me on 2 legs. I was shitting my shorts. There was a small swamp off in the woods there with big dead trees. When it hit the swamp, it hit a tree with so much force the tree fell. Steve, I could hear the impact. I ran so fast home, I blocked all my windows and never hunted for 30 years. Scared me that bad. I'm a tribal member and spent my young years running them woods till that night. I got a couple more stories for you soon, brother. Really appreciate you telling us what the F is going on out here. Peace out, Steve. All right, man. There you go. Welcome to the club. So, it saddens me to hear people losing their passion for the outdoors that way. But I'm surprised, though. You live in the res. You're First Nations. I'm surprised you didn't have a good knowledge base of what's going on out there before that happened, or emailing us, you know? I hope you email me more. All right. Next. Quick story from Oz, Down Under. G'day, Steve. My name is Dan. I'm from an area in Victoria, Australia called the Central Highlands. And although there are sightings here, my story is from my best mate. He's an avid hunter like me, and he uses dogs to hunt feral pigs here in Australia. Hogs. Last year he was hunting an area in the state of NSW, New South Wales. They were hunting behind locked gates. Areas that once allowed vehicle access and now have gates locked to prevent them. No reason's been given for the restrictions, however. We know why. So my mate was following the dogs into a location where they had a pig bailed up, caught. He ran down a steep gully, and 3 out of 4 dogs ran back up past him to the vehicle. Totally out of character. When he got to the pig, there was 1 dog on it. It was backed up against a big fallen tree which obstructed any view. He dispatched the pig and heard heavy footsteps approaching. He called out to his mate to allow him to locate him, thinking he was close by, and got a distant reply from several hundred yards away. It wasn't until a massive gray figure crossed the track that night in front of them that he started thinking your channel and all the conversations I've had with him while watching your videos. All the best, mate. Hopefully we don't see a Yowie Sasquatch strain of COVID. God knows if we could fight it off. Cheers, Dan. There you go. More from down under. More from down under. No shortage down there, is there? I have multiple stories for you. The first 2 from me, one from my close friend Sam, and another from my father, who is, as we say, someone who thinks these things are a joke and do not exist even after what happened to him. My name is Frank. I'm 28 years old and I live in West Michigan. My first experience happened when I was 17. It was the opening day of rifle season. I was extremely excited to hunt and try to harvest my second deer ever. Since I was so anxious and could not sleep, I decided to get in my stand a little early, roughly 5 a.m., maybe slightly earlier. And shortly after I climbed up in the stand, I tucked my head and my arms inside my coat and started playing some games on my phone waiting for daylight. After about 15 minutes, I heard some leaves crunching. It was the sound of footsteps. Thinking this was a deer and it was still pitch black, I just sat there and listened. The trail I would walk to the stand was basically on an old golf cart trail for a 2-track. The stand was roughly 75 yards off the trail, and I followed a deer trail to the stand. The footsteps sounded like they were coming from the 2 tracks, but the opposite way I would park and walk in from. About the same time the footsteps stopped, I thought that sounded way more bipedal than a deer walking. The footsteps started again. This time they were coming right down the deer trail, and they sounded heavy. And about 30 yards from the stand on the trail, there was a tree that had fallen around 8 to 10 inch diameter. The walking stopped there. And I heard bang. And I heard bang. It was that downed tree. I heard bang. It was that downed tree snapping, and it sounded like a gunshot. Type up. As I was shitting myself, the walking started again and got closer and closer until it stopped at the base of my ladder stand. I could feel it touch the ladder, and it shoved the ladder over. This tree stand had been there for years, and the ladder was at least 6 inches in the ground. I didn't make a peep. I felt like I couldn't even breathe. Then, as quickly as it walked up to me, it was gone. After it became daylight, I popped my head and my arms out of my coat, and I sat there not knowing what to do. I got down and didn't hunt for years and made excuses on why I didn't. That sucks. That's terrifying, though. Fast forward 2 years ago, opening day of bow season. I decided to take my wife hunting. We set up the blind the night before and decided we would go to the blind slightly before daylight. It was raining, so I zipped up all the windows and said I would unzip them after the rain stopped, trusting the weather channel would be right. It would stop right at daylight. And as we were sitting there, I began to feel uneasy. And my wife leaned over and said she didn't know why, but she felt terrified. Thinking in my head, not again, and F me. I heard something rub against the back of the blind. The sound reminded me if you took your fingernail and ran it along a tent. Sounds kind of like a zipper opening. We sat there both very afraid. I never heard anything walk to us or away from us. We sat there until complete daylight and we left. Steve, those are my 2 stories. I don't know what these things are, but I have a strong belief that after you know they exist, they like to F with you. I've been fishing on a few different rivers in the area for steelhead and heard owls along with the feeling like I'm being watched. Here are my friends and my dad's stories. Sam's story. Sam was fishing the Hex Hatch on Jordan River in the Upper Peninsula trying to catch some trophy brown trout. Fishing at night, they were at least 7 miles from where they parked and hiked in. Wow, nighttime. It's always weird to me to hear about people fishing at night. While he was fishing, he had a rock thrown at him and splashed right in front of him. He said the rock was big enough that he heard the splash and heard the rock hit the bottom of the river. After that, him and his friend got out of there and have not been back. Yeah, that'll do it to some people. Here's my dad's story. My dad was hunting in the UP, Upper Peninsula, in the 90s when I was a kid. He got in his blind early in the morning and said he heard something walk towards the blind. It stopped and started to growl. It circled behind, growling at him, and left right before daylight. See, that would really, really suck. Excuse me. Now I've never heard of any type of animal doing that. Let me know what you think. When I mentioned Sasquatch, he thought I was nuts, and he said it was probably a bear. Thank you for taking the time out of your day and reading these. It means a lot. I still hunt and fish, but I've been completely on edge since that day in my life. Since the day my life was changed when I was 17. Also told many people that story and have been laughed at more than I can count. But now that I'm older, I couldn't care less. F me. Thanks for all you do. Keep fighting the good fight. If you need any more warriors, Sam and I would gladly kick some BF. You know whose ass. Thanks, Frank. P.S. My friend Sam and I paint custom beads for steelhead and trout. We'd love to send you some. Give it a try on some of those steelhead in Canada, so shoot me a reply and I'll get you some shipped out free of charge. Thanks again. Thank you, my man. Appreciate that email and that kind gesture. Big time. You know what stands out to me that whenever I hear people going into hunting stands, I don't know why, but that one time a handful of years ago, somebody wrote in that they climbed into their stand and it was dark, and I think they were like 12 or 14 feet in the air, and they heard some noises in the dark, and then something spat a big loogie on the back of his neck as he's in his tree stand in the pitch black, 12 or 14 feet in the air. That, I don't know why that one story really stuck with me. I don't hunt in stands. I just don't. I'm on the ground. I'll sit and wait sometimes on a log, or sit and wait sometimes in certain places, but typically when I hunt, I'm never up a tree. Ever. Never in a stand or up in a stand ever. But when I hear all thousands of you hunters out there that email into us, as soon as I hear, well, I'm in my stand, and then all of a sudden I just get that visual of that thing spitting on the back of that guy's neck. Almost every time I hear the words, I got in my stand, and I'm like, oh, think about it. You know how, oh my God, would that be so, for me, picturing that'd be absolutely game probably an absolute game changer. Something that big, stealthy, and intelligent come up and spitting on me to display a statement. That would be a pretty heavy-duty statement for me. Don't you think? All you A-type hunters out there that are confident, go hunting by yourself, hike in the dark for a couple hours like I do all the time? That would suck. That would suck. That would really, really be a statement I'd have to struggle with that one. I think that would make me struggle. I mean, I still struggle the odd time. There's places I don't even go near, but something like that would really make me go, yeah, ooh. Yeah. And who knows what that was, right? Who knows what did that to that man on that stand, the one that spat on him? I don't know. All right, here we go. Story from Western Washington, U.S. Hi, Steve. Since finding your channel, I've listened to several of your videos related to the Sabe. I was originally not looking for information about the Sabe and was more interested to find that you had a tremendous amount of knowledge related to the Columbian blacktail. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. This channel and the people that have shared their encounters have allowed me the opportunity to place a more solid understanding of my own experiences that have happened while being within the wilderness part of my region in western Washington state. I spent a good portion of my life enjoying more remote and wooded areas while riding dirt bikes, hiking, and wheeling trucks. Also spent a fair amount of time as a kid hunting with my dad as well. I'm a very intuitive person and firmly believe in trusting the subtle knowledge that is available to us if we are paying attention and listening to what's there. And listen to what's there. I always notice that the woods around this region seem to hold a very cold energy, which often seems to have somewhat of an unwelcoming feeling. Despite me recognizing how beautiful everything is, it's almost a feeling like death is always nearby. I've almost always had a feeling of being watched, and I can remember sensing that almost any time I was in some deep or remote area. I have almost always had a feeling of being watched, and I can remember sensing that almost any time I was in some deep or remote area. This has never left me feeling afraid, but I have certainly felt nervous and unwelcome more times than can be counted. Additionally, I very vividly remember several times where I suddenly smelled what I believed was a rotting animal nearby, but could never find where the smell was coming from. All of these things that I knew to be very real all came to alignment when I started hearing of what other people had encountered. I apologize for the length of this message. I'll do my best to keep this short, but there are many elements to this that I feel are important to mention. Now for my story. Last year, early fall 2020, I went to scout out a new deer hunting area near Mount Vernon for the first time, which appeared to be a promising area when viewing it through on X and Google Earth. I asked my father-in-law to join me. The plan was to follow an old service for about a mile up into a relatively recent clear cut, about 3 to 5 years old, that was surrounded by heavy timber. There were signs of deer everywhere we looked. Once we arrived at the clear cut, we stood for a second to listen to the area, and out of nowhere, we heard a massive tree fall a few hundred yards away from our location. There was no noise of a chainsaw or any sign of other people in the area before that happened. We both just shrugged it off as a cool occurrence and continued making our way along the edge of the clear cut. There were several deer trails, so we decided to follow one of them through the middle of the rugged clear cut to look for fresh tracks. I told my father-in-law that I wanted to set up a game camera nearby a heavily wooded intersection where a few lines met up. He continued on while I backtracked about 100 yards to set up the camera. And once I started mounting the camera, I began feeling like I was being watched. I continued about my business, but repeatedly checked all around me while a nervousness came over me. I quickly finished setting up the camera and then proceeded to try to catch up to my father-in-law. And at that point, I felt the need to go as quickly as I could. I had this feeling like he was in some sort of trouble. I basically began trying to run through the middle of this trash clear cut that was about waist deep with small limbs that were left behind from the logging. I noticed my father-in-law was nowhere to be found. None of this felt good or right. It felt like trouble was brewing very quickly. I finally made it out of the cut and back onto the service road, and I noticed I had some cell service. So I tried calling my father-in-law. I come to find out, he ended up back on the road and was a few hundred yards away from where I was. I didn't mention anything to him about what had just transpired and only looked at him to see if he appeared to notice anything unnerving or unusual. He seemed oblivious to anything related to what I had just felt, so I said nothing about it. Then fast forward 1 month later, I invited my father-in-law to go back to the area with me to check my camera for any deer action. At the last minute, he said he couldn't go, so I ended up going by myself. When I arrived, I said a few prayers asking God to keep me safe and allow for this outing to go well. And as I began walking up the overgrown service road, I would stop to listen, smell, see if any deer were present. I did this for quite some time, walking silently and stopping every 50 yards or so to observe everything. Excuse me. I began going uphill where the road starts to wind to the left. I had a very strong feeling that I would see something as I rounded the corner, so I silently walked and stayed inside the curve to avoid being seen while maintaining my focus up the road. To my amazement, I suddenly saw a tan-colored body 15 to 20 feet ahead of me. My first thought was, deer. As this animal walked out into the road, I saw a long tail with a black tip. It was actually a large male cougar that appeared to be between 150 and 200 pounds. He didn't know I was even there. I moved my foot, and its head snapped my direction. We locked eyes, and my first instinct was to stare into its eyes and sound like a bigger cat that wasn't going to go back down from him. So I let out a snarling growl and showed it my teeth. Its eyes turned into saucers, and the thing took off lightning speed up the road without making a sound. I immediately drew my pistol, followed in its direction as quickly as I could while being as silent as possible, and I never saw it again. Then about 5 minutes later, I came across a rifle hunter. I was scouting in preparation for the late archery season. We chatted a few minutes, and I mentioned to him that I saw a big cat down in the direction he was heading. And he mentioned to me that he had seen some does near the deep timber area close to where I had my camera set up. He also mentioned that the timber was too thick to get through, so he stayed to the roads. Make note of this. I continued up to the clear cut near the deep timber to collect my camera. I then decided to take a look into the timber, and it was only thick for about 30 to 40 feet, and then turned into ferns and what appeared to be a deer trail haven. As soon as I made my way in about 75 yards, I began feeling like I was being watched again. Nothing harmful, but just a presence. I respectfully stood there to listen for a minute, and then turned around and left the timber. But once out of the timber, I decided to go further up and explore an overgrown road. So I soon felt the being watched feeling again. So I drew my pistol, continued carefully making my way up the overgrown road with my pistol drawn and expressing my confidence in God's ability to keep me safe, thanking him for doing so. The entire time I felt like I was about to be ambushed. But I continued my conversation with God and proceeded anyway. It was like I was sort of being drawn in by more than just my own curiosity. At the end of the road was a huge cliff. I scanned the area and looked into the brush, and I noticed a branch that was broken from a tree that was about 6 feet up from the ground. I immediately had the feeling of, don't go any further into the brush. So I respectfully stopped and backed up. I turned around and eventually made it way back out to the clear cut, but still had that nervous feeling the whole time. Once the road opened up, I was surprised to see a truck was now parked on the road facing the clear cut. I holstered my pistol, walked up to say hello, and a man about my age, I'm 37, and his 2 young sons were glassing the clear cut. in an attempt to try to fill one of the boys' rifle tags for the first time. And I mentioned to the man that I had just come from the overgrown road. And he gave me a strange look and said he would never go in there, and that he had a bad feeling about it that scared him. I mentioned to him that I also went into the deep timber, and he said it was too thick to go in there, so he didn't even bother. This was now the second time in the same day that two complete strangers told me that they didn't want to go into the timber because it was too thick. But it really wasn't. I already went in and knew that wasn't the case. Did both of these guys feel what I felt and become scared, or did their subconscious tell them to stay out? Either way, I felt something and showed whatever it was my respect for its place in being there. That's important to make note of. Be respectful. Don't treat the wilderness like you own the place, because you don't. We only get to share it with everything and/or everyone else. I believe my intuitive awareness and deep respect for my place in this life allowed me the opportunity to experience what happened and not have it turn into a bad situation. I also firmly believe that it's important to be neutral, but also assertive when exploring the real natural world. You're not there to disturb anything or anyone, but you need to be prepared to not back down either if shit hits the fan. When I arrived home later that afternoon, I plugged my camera's SD card into the computer. I had over 100 photos, no deer in any of them. The camera was set up to do 3 shots burst upon detecting motion, not more than once every minute. The first of the photos were of me leaving the camera to catch up to my father-in-law during my first outing. The next photos were from 2 hours later during the same day. The camera picked up what appeared to be a person, sort of, located about 30 to 40 yards up from where I'd set up the camera. My wife was with me and immediately said, "What's that?" I said it looked like a person walking through the clear cut, and they were wearing a black hooded sweatshirt. We both noticed what appeared to be a pair of eyes that looked to be glowing in contrast to the black of the person's shape. She then nervously said, "That's really creepy looking." It's difficult to make out whatever's in the 3 photos. The IR detector on the camera was clearly triggered by something, but I can't tell what exactly is in the pictures. I later looked for photos of the Sabe and can clearly identify similarities in the shape of the figure and what looks like a face, at least to me. I feel confident that whatever it is, it was definitely responsible for how I felt at the time of setting up the camera. Despite the things that took place, I still went out and hunted the area during late archery season. A longtime friend and I went in before daylight to make the 45-minute hike in total darkness to start our hunt in the clear cut. Before we went, I told my friend that we may end up running into something because of what I experienced before. We're both a little nervous, but we're able to put that aside and go in anyway. I said a prayer asking for God's protection and carried 2 apples in my backpack as a peace offering should anything happen, confront us. That part may seem silly, but that notion came from my gut. I trust that more than my own mind. And to my amazement, we spent the entire day with what felt like a welcome sensation for us to be there. A feeling that was not present during my previous 2 visits. Neither of us ended up punching our tags, but we had an awesome adventure and ended up seeing 2 large does about 200 yards out right before we went home. All in all, it turned out to be a great success, and it confirmed we were in the right area for deer. With that, I want to say thank you for facilitating this platform for everyone to share the truth. Your effort has certainly helped me align many experiences throughout my life with more certainty than I had known before. I've never doubted anything I've experienced, but also couldn't define or compare it to anything else either. If you're ever near Edmonds, Washington, feel free to give me a call or send a message. I'd be happy to buy you a beer or make some steak and sit down for a meal and conversation with you, as I have much more that can be shared about other strange encounters. Keep up the no BS perspective. We're not here to answer to any man, ever. We're ultimately only to answer to God for the things that come about throughout our lives and the choices we decide to make. Feel free to use my name, as I don't give a rip about what people think of my experience. Hopefully it can help someone else be more confident to get out there and not to be afraid of the unknown or what others may say or think. We need to always do your best to control our emotions, but also pay attention to what we are feeling. We are never flooded with emotion for no reason. So understanding what triggers them is imperative to our ability of being able to move forward, no matter what's going on. I personally feel that our emotions are actually intended to provide feedback to our conscious minds about what is happening within our present environment, which can also allow us to make appropriate decisions on how to respond. Stay safe and take care. Sincerely, Paul Mattoon. Appreciate you, Paul, and the invite for the steak. Hope you found a big buck. And you know as well as I do, the whole planet listening to this channel, well, the whole planet's not here, but the whole gang is going to be going, where's the trail cam picture? Why didn't you share it with us? Right? You know they are. Me? I'm good. I've seen them. Nothing's going to change. No photograph's going to change much for me. But I'm sure the people are going to be wanting. They want to see that picture. If you're still hanging out, you want to share it, go ahead. Or not. And there you go. What am I going to do now? I got to go open my shop door, hook up my boat to the truck, back it in out of the rain, and I got to change all the oils on all 3 motors, and then I'm done. Then, I got a couple minor things I got to do inside it and get all my gear ready to go. And I'm ready. I got that major chore done and out of the way. Then what? Then I have a leak in my Zodiac I have to fix so that I can throw it in the truck and bounce it over the mountain with the outboard. And I found the, in my drone video that day, and I went up from the mouth of the river, and there's that guy camping there. Well, if I didn't go on Google Earth and I found the road that gets there, and it's not all the way around the mountain. You can just go up across the bridge where I put the camera in the water, goes up, hooks all the way around, and follows the river back down on the other side, right to where the guy's camping. So I can easily get the Zodiac in there. Because where we access the lake on the other side, we had to climb over, I don't know, 50 yards of blown in logs. Imagine poor Sarah trying to wrestle that Zodiac with me on those logs. Not good. So I'm going to do that. I have to check out the weather situation. What else? A couple days, I'm going to take off and I'm going to go to the coastal mountains solo again. And I'm going to go hike up and grab all of my cameras. Now that enough snow is gone. I'm also going to look for shed antlers. And I'm just going to, what you might call, bee. I'm going to go to one of my favorite places in the whole world. And I'm just going to go bee and do. I mean, I was talking to Sarah about this morning. I used to go hike those mountains. I will bet you 3 times a week at least. After work, weekends, while not working, hunting full time. But I used to run around. I've ran around those mountains for 20 years plus. And there just does something to me being in those forests. I don't know what it is, but it's really good for my health, especially my mental health, my physical health. It's just really good for me. And I need to do it. So I'm going to go hit that. And then I got to make a big decision on what I'm going to do as far as travel and adventure. And I have to do that fairly quick too. And I have to get some people on here with me. Maybe today. Later on today, I might pull off having a guest on here for you guys to listen to that conversation with us. And there you go. Enough babbling. My brain's going out the door. Away from here. I got to get going. Share my story at howtohunt.com. Get it to me, all right? Speak out loud. Don't be scared. And just speak the truth more than ever, especially today. Force yourself to speak the truth no matter what, especially today, all right? There's a lot of non-truth in all of our communities right now, and it needs to go away, right? So lead by example and speak the truth no matter how crazy you think it might sound, okay? Later. Yeah, got one. Yes. Finally. Oh my gosh. That was like 500 casts. Oh, it feels heavy too. Oh yeah. There we go. Beautiful. Oh. Yeah.